So this takes us into the actual presentation. This is your Riverview Community Plan update. This is your April 1st Microsoft Teams open house that we have. And just basically a little bit about who we are, who is Plan Hillsborough and the Planning Commission. Andrea and I are land use planners, so we are working with the Planning Commission. What the Planning Commission is we do long-range land use studies and long-range for the comprehensive plan. So basically what we're interested in is where will people live, where will people work, and whether that's today or in the future. We're looking out decades. Part of what we're doing here is we're looking out to 2050. So how about the Hillsborough Transportation Planning Organization? They're working with how are people going to move from point A to point B. So you live in Riverview, but maybe you work in West Shore. Well, how do you get there? And the Transportation Planning Organization is doing long-range transportation plans to help with that. We also have the Hillsborough Interlocal Planning Board. The Hillsborough River passes through unincorporated Hillsborough County, the city of Temple Terrace, and the city of Tampa. So it has a planning board. Alafia River, which is in the Riverview area, only goes through unincorporated Hillsborough County. So a little bit more about the Planning Commission. So we've been around since the 1960s. We are established by the state of Florida through the legislature. We are independent. We are multi-jurisdictional. We do that comprehensive planning, so that holistic 30,000 square foot. And we are basically through appointed citizens. So that appointed citizen, those are our board members that we have. What does that Planning Commission board do? They make recommendations to your elected officials. We work with all 4 of the jurisdictions in Hillsborough County: Tampa, Temple Terrace, Plant City, and unincorporated Hillsborough County. So the planning commissioners make recommendations, and as staff, we make a recommendation to that planning commission, and then that recommendation travels to your elected officials. Your elected officials have the final say-so, whether it is the Riverview Community Plan or a rezoning or a map amendment that may be in your community. So a little bit about what we work within. The comprehensive plan, we already talked a little bit about that. Underneath it, there's an element that's called the livable communities element. That element houses all of your community plans for unincorporated Hillsborough County. There are currently 22 of them. We're working right now with the residents up in Valrico, and that will be the 23rd. So within the Riverview Community Plan, we have visions, goals, and strategies. You also have a concept map. So how does all of that work together? How do you implement those issues? Some of it can be implemented through the Land Development Code. Riverview is special in that sense. You do actually have language specific to US 301, where you have a downtown district just to the north of the Alafia River and some of that downtown district just to the south of the Alafia River. We can talk a little bit about that. So what is community plan? So it's an extension of a comprehensive plan that provides specific policy to a defined area, right? We like to talk about this. Fonona-Sassa is not Riverview. Riverview is not Apollo Beach. Apollo Beach is not Keystone, Odessa. Everybody's a little bit different, but the comprehensive plan is looking at it perhaps as all of you are the same. However, the community plan allows for some of that variation and independence within it. So it represents that vision and the goals for the specific area. The boundary is created through public feedback. This is one where we already have a boundary set since your plan was adopted back in 2006. The goals and strategy represent the community's future priorities. And we've already talked about that there are currently 22 adopted plans in unincorporated Hillsborough County. So the plan is general. It does not affect the use of land unless it's explicit and with general public support. So again, here we have in Riverview, there are some areas specifically along US 301 where there's some design standards and also some issues with intensity and density. How many homes might you build? How big would the commercial building be? And about height, all of that we have in the Land Development Code, but you set that forward and the conversation is had in your community plan. Being within the boundaries of a community plan does not affect your school district, your address, your zip code, your tax information, none of that. Again, this is a separate planning process and it doesn't affect any of those other planning processes that are out there. So how does staff use this? Well, it's used by staff to inform or prioritize infrastructure projects that may include improvements and maintenance through the capital improvements program. So what we like to talk about again is that we have a big pen for policy in a community plan, but we don't have a checkbook. So nothing is funded through your community plan. It's funded through the capital improvements program. But the two of them do have a relationship with one another in that the capital improvements program as a 5-year plan can look into community plans and other documents for inspiration about where and when dollars will be spent in the county. And it's used by elected officials to find consistency for development decisions. So again, your community plan is looked at a consistency when there is a rezoning or when there might be a map amendment within your community. So if somebody today has undeveloped land and they want to build something, we're going to be looking at your community plan as well as a variety of other policy as we gauge whether or not it is consistent. It's used by staff again when reviewing those applications for new development, and it's used to inform other policies within the comprehensive plan. So how do residents use this? So it's used to memorialize a community's priorities and vision in the adopted document. Well, what does that mean? It means that there's power in the document because, again, it allows folks who are working through this document, we'll be here working with you 12, 16 months, as long as it takes. And once we're done with this, you will have reprioritized Riverview. There are currently 13 goals that your community plan has, and we can reprioritize those goals for what life is like in Riverview in 2025 forward. Again, this plan was from 2006. That shared voice to address your community concerns and solutions for these concerns, and it's used to inform public comment and feedback that you can share about projects happening in your area. A lot of the times we get folks who are looking for small grants to actually do work, whether it's commercial or neighborhood improvement grants, and they're utilizing their community plan because their community plan talks specifically about improvements to commercial districts, or it may be safety concerns for areas around schools, lighting, any number of different things that may be mentioned in a community plan that can then be passed on to grant applications, whether it's the county actually looking at those grant applications or whether it's something within your community that are actually going after grant applications, nonprofits and such. So again, we talked about this. It does not allocate funds for infrastructure projects. By design, a plan does not generally change a property's land use or zoning. What I mean by that is if you have a piece of property on Rodine or on Sims or on Riverview Drive, and you're interested in saying, hey, I would really like to change my zoning because I would like to change this house and turn it into a CPA office, right? You know, tax season. So we're all trying to figure that out right now, right? Well, this is not really the process to do that. The process to do that is to go through the zoning process, and we can work with you on how that actually happens. Now, if you wanted to talk about the entire corridor of Sims or Rodine or Riverview or 301, yes, that's where we have a conversation about the entire corridor and look for consensus in the community about changing whether it's the design of that, of buildings along that roadway, or perhaps uses along that roadway. And we'll also have conversations about intersections where we may look for nodes. We'll have conversations about connecting parks to those nodes, any number of things that basically talk about the assets in your community and how you can actually move around from asset to asset. So a little bit about your plan. So we talked about that, those 13 goals and strategies. And Andrea is going to have an opportunity in a little bit to actually go through that exercise that we have, and she'll be able to say, hey, you've got those 13 strategies. Let's talk about what's next with those. Your plan was from 2006. The area was broken down into character districts. That map shows you those character districts right there. One of those districts is the 301 corridor, and the 301 corridor itself has your downtown districts, it has a commercial district, it has mixed-use districts, and that's something that we can have a conversation about. That policy direction envisions US 301 as walkable mixed-use environment supported by downtown with building design guidelines. Those design guidelines are actually codified in the Land Development Code. So you can go to Muni Code today, I think it's section 3.19.00.01, and you can actually look at the special district for Riverview for its downtown, and you can see the areas just to the north of the river and the areas just to the south of the river, and basically what some of those design standards are. So why are we here? Why are we all here tonight? So the Board of County Commissioners requested this update to coincide with a study that the Tampa-Hillsborough Expressway Authority is doing on US Highway 301, on I-75, and on US 41. And we do have some staff here tonight who can have conversations about that from Thea as well as their consultant. And I also have a couple of slides which I'll go through a little bit on this. But Planning Commission, we're going to work with Thea and its consultants in the community to have those conversations, specifically on US 301. Thea is also going to have conversations in the community up and down the coast to talk about, well, could it go on US 41? Could it go on I-75? Could it go on US 301? With the community of Riverview, you have policy specifically to US 301, and the Board of County Commissioners wanted us to go out there and work with you guys, because if in 12, 16, 18 months, then Thea has that study completed and US 301 ends up being the preferred alternative, we've had this conversation with you. But by no means does that mean that a decision has been made, because they are at the beginning of their process to look at those other roadways as well. So real quick, let's just talk about what that infrastructure investment is. So the infrastructure investment is to look at the Leroy-Selman Expressway as it goes from the northern part of this map that you have in here, basically at US 301 and where the Leroy-Selman currently is, to go south all the way down to Big Bend. And again, we're showing it here on US 301 because that's what we're going to have a conversation with the community about. It could very well go down I-75. It could very well go down US 41. Why US 301? Well, ranked 7th out of 162 projects on the TPO's Major Investment Project Needs Assessment for congestion reduction, and basically that congestion, the safety, the resiliency, the evacuation concerns. So if you live in this area and you work in West Shore, or you or even further south, again, the Riverview Community Plan, its southern terminus is County Road 672. This would go all the way to Big Bend, so not even all the way to the very southern edge of your community plan. I'm sure that you will agree, whether you have lived in this community for a couple of years or a couple of decades, you've seen tremendous change, and part of that change has been traffic and congestion. So this is one way that your elected officials are looking at relieving some of that congestion in the future. This shows you Thea's basically their timeline. We don't have our timeline in here because we are working with Thea through this. So where we are is right there at the beginning of the phase 2, which is basically active collaboration between all of the partners that we have here. So you see where they're going all the way out till about 2027. And they're just starting what is called the Project Development and Environmental Study, a PD&E. That PD&E is where they start to get down to some of the nuts and bolts about which one of those roadways, if any of those roadways, might be the preferred alternative or the one that is chosen to actually further this and actually do the engineering study on it. In 2028 and on, again, would be looking at any actual construction. So again, all this is doing is talking about studying a project. It is not actually about building the project. And again, Thea and its consultants are here and can answer some of those questions. Again, this just goes back through some of that status where they're finalizing, evaluating the feasibility of that toll road. The public engagement is ongoing. Again, they're here tonight to work with us. And then when they are having meetings out in the community, we'll actually be attending some of those meetings as well. So again, 2 birds, 1 stone. I'm sure you guys are busy out in the community, and the last thing you want to do is it's Tuesday night, go to a planning commission meeting, the next night go to a meeting about a roadway. This way we're all there at the same time. This just shows you again where they have their survey that you can get through. We have a couple of QR codes in this. This is one specific to 301, their study website. They also have a survey that you can go ahead and take. And I think right here, Andrea, if you want to take this over, I can go ahead and continue to progress. Next slide if you wanted to go through the profile.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. For those that joined a bit late, my name is Andrea Papandrew. Myself and Jay Collins work for the Hillsborough County Planning Commission. And we're going to be the main leads for the Riverview Community Plan update that you'll see us for the next year or so. So I'm just going to do a couple of demographics before we get into the surveys and the Q&A portion of tonight's meeting. So what you see on the screen before you is the 2024 profile for Riverview. I'm going to hit a couple of the highlights. We do have the full demographic packet and information on our project page. And if there's additional information we can, or questions, we can get you that information. So the median household income is $97,000. Unemployment is 4%. You can see the ethnicity breakdown on the screen before you. 38% of your residents are between 18 to 44 years. 3% do not own a car. So the majority of folks, as you probably know, driving on the Riverview roads are driving automobiles as their main form of travel. 3% have limited English, 6% have a known disability, and 7% of residents have a low income population. Jay, do you mind hitting the next slide? So when we look at 2010 versus 2024 for Riverview, 85% of the housing types are single family for 2024. And this is a slight increase from 2010 where it was 83%. So the majority of homes in Riverview are single family. 65% of the jobs are service jobs, and that's an increase from 59% in 2010. Since 2010, there has been a significant increase in population and jobs. Population has gone up 81% and employment 97%. And part of the community plan update is we're looking out till 2050, and what we're seeing is population and jobs are going to continue to grow. So population about 19% increase looking out to 2050. And the projected employment at this time is 39% increase. So that was just a little bit of background about Riverview and the demographics. And we have much more of this information on the project page. The website links have been posted in the chat. They're also before you with the QR code. We also have the existing Riverview Community Plan from 2006. If you'd like to go and look at the 13 goals and kind of what was established back in 2006, that's what will be updated as part of this process for the community plan. Next slide, Jay. And then we have had 2 in-person open houses, March 22nd and 25th. We are at the Riverview Community, the Riverview Library, and then today virtually. And all the information from the presentations, including the recording for tonight, is going to be on our project website. And then how to get involved. I mean, part of it you're already doing. You're here at a virtual meeting on a Tuesday evening, going online for our project website. Office hours, we will be having occasionally throughout this process, one-on-one informal office hours for folks that want to come and just ask more questions about Riverview and the plan update. And anyone who registered or joined tonight, we will be sending out constant contact emails, letting you know when those opportunities come up. And then you can also volunteer as a plan ambassador. So if you are president of a neighborhood association or a community leader and would like to be an ambassador and kind of let folks know when meetings are coming up or let them know what's going on as part of this update, we have that opportunity that you can sign up for on the project page. And then what's before you today is my contact information and Jay's information as well. And then the QR code for the project page, which has also been posted in the chat. And then what we really want to kind of get feedback from you guys today is 2 online surveys. So the project website is up there. The picture on the screen shows you when you go to the project website, there's a tab that says survey under what's new, and there's 2 surveys. So we have a Riverview community survey that's asking about Riverview overall. That survey looks at 13 themes. Jay, I think that's the next slide, if you don't mind. Thank you. So that survey looks at the 13 themes that are in the Riverview Community Plan today. So when we're talking about themes, we're talking about the environment is a theme, transportation is a theme, infrastructure, quality schools, public facilities, parks and recreation, that is a theme. So taking those themes and really trying to look at what are the strengths and weaknesses of the community today, and what are the opportunities and threats that can affect your community tomorrow. So we're asking folks to go through and say, okay, based on this theme, based on infrastructure, for example, This is a general example, not specific to Riverview, but looking at road infrastructure. For example, if you're filling out the SWOT survey for Riverview, a strength would be the roads are in good shape. A weakness, which I think a lot of folks in Hillsborough probably feel this way, too much traffic, not enough safe sidewalks and bike lanes. And an opportunity for looking out to tomorrow, find ways to reduce traffic while including new bike and pedestrian facilities. And then a threat, widening roads can affect my quality of life. So that's an example of how you would use those kind of themes to fill out that SWOT. If you want to fill out, you want to give us 2 answers or 45 answers, we'll take as much feedback as we can get. So that is the Riverview SWOT, which is the blue QR code. And Sarah has posted the links as well in the chat. And then we also have a US 301 district specific. This is another survey, a few questions to kind of get more feedback specifically on the 301 corridor that the Riverview community uses. So those are 2 surveys. I know I went through that pretty quickly, but Jay and I do want to leave time to kind of answer questions as well.
Yeah, all right. Hey, thank you very much. So that concludes the presentation, and I think now we can go into some of the questions.
And if you want to post your question in the chat, we can read it, or if you want to raise your hand as well and ask the question.
So I'm not seeing any questions yet. I see that a couple of people have raised their hands. Let me see if there's anything in the Q&A itself.
All right, I'm seeing, Jay, there are some chat, but there's a couple people that raised their hands. Do you want?
Okay, I see. What kind of effect? So this is from Giselle Cantoni. What kind of effect does this have on property values along the corridor? So we're not the Hillsborough County tax assessor, so we do not actually work with property taxes and would be able to assess things such as that. In this meeting solely related, is this meeting solely related to traffic concerns? No, not at all. Not at all. So that's part of the reason why the SWOT analysis that you can do will go over anything. So whether it's talking about parks and recreation, whether it's talking about lighting, whether it's talking about libraries or any of the other, bread and butter things that you would expect your community to have, we certainly can have conversations about it because your community plan talks about it. I do not know anything about eminent domain. Again, the folks at THEA and WSP, I'm sure once they have actually gone through the full study to be able to see if there would be any additional right-of-way that would be needed for any of the corridors that they're looking at. And I believe Mr. Bob Fry, there's a couple of other members from THEA and WSP who are here. By all means, if you guys can unmute yourself, you can just jump in if that is correct, incorrect, or otherwise.
There's a question from Thomas Jones on what are specifics of what is Solomon extension would look like, elevated lanes along 301.
Good evening. My name is Bob Fry. I'm the Director of Planning at the Expressway Authority. And first to clarify, the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority was asked by the Board of County Commissioners to look at the 301 corridor for a potential roadway. That will be the corridor that we'll be focusing on. We will be studying the impacts to those other roads, but the study will be for the US 301 corridor. As for the part of the PD&E is to determine exactly what you're asking. what the road will look like, where it will go, talking to the community, getting those information. Right now, we do not have any preconceived notions of what that roadway will look like or what the study will show. That is what we'll be doing. We'll be starting. It'll be a 2-3 year period. We'll be going through it and have a lot of community input as part of that study. So right now, we're just getting ready to start the study and work with the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I see somebody talking about turning right from Riverview Drive, heading east on US 301 is terrible. Yeah, and these are things we like getting those comments because we have a non-adopted section where we put some of these things into, and it allows us to have some of those conversations about what types of improvements in the community after the fact. So things like that are useful. And so again, there are some other questions in the chat specifically to the roadways. Bob, I know it's, would 301 toll would be a raised road? Again, it's going back, and I guess it's looking at impacts of what would happen on US 41 and I-75, but 301 is being studied as the specificity of that study.
Yeah, yes, and I'd like, Jay, I would also like to quantify that the PD&E will determine whether or not a build or no build. There's a no build option to every PD&E that is done, and during the PD&E will determine what the roadway can look like based on the constructability and the corridor and the community. So at this point, there are no preconceived notions of what this roadway will look like, where that's what we're doing the study for.
So, and again, there's a lot of questions that are coming in about the roadway. So I do want to be able to separate. Bob Fry and Thea have a study. They have a website and everything else specific to what they're working on. We are updating the community plan. So it's two separate items that are happening, two separate actions, two separate studies that are going on. But we know that each of them kind of influence the other a little bit, right? So some of these questions that are on here, you might be best answered by actually visiting Thea's website and seeing it. And our website that you saw tonight has all of that information that will actually take you to Thea's website so you can get some of that information. Questions about public transportation. Eventually, we will have some representatives from HART and the Florida Department of Transportation who will be part of this conversation. By all means, reach out to HART and have conversations with them about improving access, public transportation in the area. So I see from Mr. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're speaking first.
I was just going to say, I see from Mr. Brian Boker a planning question. So is changing underlying zoning within the downtown district, the 1.5 miles, an option? I do think that all options are on the table, Mr. Boker, especially if we do end up having some sort of a facility eventually operating in the right of way of 301. It begs the question of, is the actual code for 301, that design code, still the best option for 301, or should we look at something else? Or regardless, we might open it up and just having a conversation with folks 20 years later, and they may feel a little bit differently about their community and aspire for something different in those areas. Andrea?
Well, there's a couple of comments that you missed, but I do know a couple of folks who had their hands raised. I think one of the questions missed is, what is the community plan timeframe generally? 20 years, 10 years?
Yeah, so that's good. We don't really like to tie a specific time to it. Comprehensive planning looks at about a 10 to 15 year frame. So we like to think of the community plans in that same respect, a 10 to 15 year planning horizon. And again, you guys finished your original plan back in 2005, 2006, and here we are in 2025.
And then one more question in the chat, and then if you want to take, I think a couple of folks that had their questions in the chat have their hands raised, so we could call on them. But there's a question at the beginning that I think we missed. Someone said, Mary K. Scott, you may have missed this question. Do those that are leading the study or making decisions live in Riverview, specifically the corridor?
Yeah, so for us specifically, nobody has to show their ID when they got into this meeting. Nobody has to show us an ID at the door when they come to a community meeting. We do ask for addresses and zip codes. We can go ahead and geofence social media to where it just targets these areas. We only put signs out in the Riverview area. We only send mailed notices to HOA presidents in that mailed notice. So folks that live in Citrus Park or Tampa or wherever, we don't notice them for what's happening in Riverview. We concentrate the public engagement just in Riverview.
Okay. Brian had his hand up. Oh, wait. Brian had his hand up. And I think you lowered it. But you did have your hand up first, Brian. So and then we'll go to Bob Clark. I think you should be able to unmute yourself, Brian Boker. You want to try?
Got it?
Yep,
You
we
there?
can hear you.
Yes.
Oh, good. Hello. Good evening. Hey, great work on this presentation, by the way. I'm trying to write the article, and I've got so much information, I don't know where to go. But that's a good thing. One question I have about the Riverview plan, the community plan. Are we working with the 13 goals that we have? Will any goals be added, or would you rather have us reprioritize the 13 goals that are already established?
Yeah, so we definitely start with those 13 goals. And what we'll do with those is ask folks, are these still goals representative of the community now in 2025? Should those goals be collapsed together to have a more simplistic look at it? Can we talk about infrastructure as a goal, which we could probably collapse 2, 3, or 4 of your goals down into that one?
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So it doesn't necessarily have to stick with those 13 goals. You can kind of move things around based on what's needed now versus what was needed 15 years ago. Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
Thank you.
And as context for this, last year we updated Palm River Progress Village, and they went through somewhat of a similar task where they had it wasn't quite the phone book, but it was a lengthy community plan. And we looked to simplify that community plan by doing exactly that, by taking some of the strategies and some of the goals and collapsing them together to provide something that was a little bit easier for folks to grasp and understand, and also took out some of the specificity of saying, I'm looking for a sidewalk between point A and point B, and instead saying this community prioritizes sidewalks and connectivity, but no longer saying point A to point B. That goes into a non-adopted section where the community can still raise it to the attention it deserves, but it basically makes the policy and the plan that much shorter.
Okay. And then I'm gonna unmute Bob Clark. Or Bob, you should be able to unmute yourself if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for hosting this meeting. I had a whole bunch of questions on the roadway itself, but I understand that it's premature to ask those questions. So another one I have is, say this plan gets completed and Thea decides that they want to go forward with this. Who has the final say? Who has the approval? Is that strictly in the hands of the commissioners, or do the voters of Hillsborough County have any input as to whether it will occur or not?
So we can let Bob answer this, Bob Fry answer this, and I'll answer this. So the Board of County Commissioners has part of that final say-so. You, I, all of us on here, if you are a resident of Hillsborough County and you are registered to vote, we put those folks in, or you didn't if you voted for somebody else, but they are the folks who have that final say-so. And then I believe Mr. Fry also has a board.
So
Yes,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I was going to say, Thea has a board of directors that this will go to for their approval, as well as the Board of County Commissioners, since they've asked us to do this project on that. So that is how the process will go. We will complete the study, do a presentation to them on what the findings are, and then it will go through those boards. We actually would prefer to get as much information and comments as possible on the front end of these projects, because we can build them into the study and make sure that we're addressing what we're hearing. So any comments you mentioned you had a lot of comments on the roadway. We would love to hear them. Please make sure they get in, that we get those down so that we can take it in. It's much better to address it at the beginning of the study and through the study than afterwards to have to go back and try to find ways to answer them. So we welcome the information from the communities as much as possible.
Okay, so from what Jay told me just now, the voters of the Hillsborough County have no input in the approval process of this expressway going in whatsoever. Yes, we elected the commissioners, but there's no opportunity for the citizens to approve this thing through any kind of referendum. Correct?
Ms. Caper, can you hear me by chance? I don't know if
Yes.
This would have to be a tip amendment.
That would depend on the source of funding that is used for it. Certain sources would require a tip amendment, but I don't think we have that information until it gets further along in the process. The tip is the Transportation Improvement Program, which is a document that the Transportation Planning Organization, or TPO, adopt and maintain. So depending on the sources of funding, it would go through that process, and the board of the TPO are different officials, including some of the elected officials and others, but it's a little premature to say that at this point.
Thanks, Sarah. So again, Mr. Clark, there will be conversations in front of your elected officials. I do not know how those conversations will be structured. I would think it would behoove the Board of County Commissioners to take public comment. I do not know if it is in a public hearing. It's not my station in life to tell those elected officials what to do in that capacity. But I would assume that as this process moves forward, we'll get to learn a little bit more about just that.
And
Okay,
Jay,
thank you.
I want to stress Jay, I'd like to stress again, a big part of the PD&E process is community public involvement and public input. So the more that we can get on that, that will be taken and put into the document that will be part of what is presented to the boards and to the elected officials. So I can't stress enough that how important it is to make sure that they take part in that public involvement portion, and we will definitely be trying to make sure to get as much of that as possible as part of the study.
I have one more question. This is Bob Clark. I read in some kind of document that I just saw recently concerning this project, that one of the justifications for extending the Selman down, specifically down 301 as opposed to 75 or 41, is that the county was looking for future development in this portion of Hillsborough County to take place east of Riverview, and that this expressway would better serve that development increase. Can you comment on that at all?
I don't have any specific knowledge. I can say, yes, there is additional additional development that is occurring east of Riverview in the Baum area, the Wimauma area, and we are doing studies to look at expanding the urban service boundary in Little Manatee South as well as in the I-4 corridor. And we're doing that for population and employment projections through 2050, because we are going to run out of land in other areas of the county to actually house people and provide employment for people, which is part of our job, is to make sure that, again, just as I started the conversation with everybody, our task, our charge is to make sure that we can find areas for people to live, places for people to work, and make sure that they can move from A to B. We just do so out decades in advance. So
Okay, thank you.
Specifically the infrastructure, I don't know, but are we looking and are we making plans further to the east? Yes.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. I know also there's been, Mary Kay is asking about planners. Do we live in the community? So the planning commission's got, I think staff, like total staff, we're like 50 or so people. I don't know if any of us actually live specifically in Riverview. I have been working at the Planning Commission for 20 years and have worked in all 4 of the jurisdictions doing special studies like this one. And anecdotally, I have family that live in Riverview. So I'm myself pretty familiar with the community, having been through that community now for the last 10 or 15 years with that in mind.
Jay, there was a question earlier asking about if there's any planning to improve Riverview, similar to how Wesley Chapel is adding many features, noting that Riverview has a nature advantage with a water feature and river in this person's opinion. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, so the current community plan does make mention to Riverview for the Alafia River. It looks for additional access to the river. While E.G. Simmons Park is not necessarily in Riverview, not at all, as a matter of fact, one of the strategies of Riverview was to provide additional bay access, and E.G. Simmons has been improved over the years. So long story short with that is a conversation that was had in 2005. There has been some improvement to some of the parks, and that is something that we can continue to have that conversation and look for whether there are opportunities that present themselves today or opportunities that may present themselves in the future as a strategy for the community.
I did just reply to one of Mary Kay Scott's questions about she's an HOA president and she did not recall receiving mail. So we get the HOA list from the Neighborhood Relations Department for Hillsborough County. They provide us with the names and the emails and the addresses of the HOA presidents. And so I put the link in there. They do have a link on their website to update that information. But since you're joining with us today, we do have your information your email and your name, and we'll add you to our constant contact list to keep you informed.
And we can certainly add you to our mailing list, but we cannot add you to neighborhood relations list. That is something that you have to apply for through their system as a neighborhood representative.
Going back up, I don't know if we answered this. Andrew Barry is there any planning to improve Riverview similar to how Wesley Chapel is adding many features? Riverview has a natural advantage with a water features river, in my opinion. Andrew, I would say that's exactly the comments that we want at the beginning of this process is what should we be looking at for Riverview. So please include that when you take the survey as well. But yeah, that's what we want to see. We're just starting the process now, so we don't have any final plans or anything. We're coming to get feedback from the communities at the start here. I think Kathy had a question. Are the planners looking at any of the 30,000-foot view or at ground level? I'm not sure if she's referring to the community plan or the THEA study. But when we're talking about the community plan, we are looking at the kind of 30,000-foot level. When we're talking about, what you want to see for the future and the themes that are more, broad for the area. When you're talking the ground level of like, specific details for a construction, a site or a development that would get into the land development code, which would be a separate document.
As for the PD&E, what the PD&E is looking at is we're looking for to make sure that there's no disproportional impacts to communities and to different areas from a roadway. That is part of the PD&E to look at, not the physical environment, the social, cultural, as well as the air quality and the other things that go into that. So we are definitely looking at the ground level, talking to the people at the along the corridor, working with the homeowners associations, the shopping, the stores are along there, getting that information at the ground level, as well as doing the traffic analysis. We'll be doing a lot of traffic counts out there and things along those lines. So the PD&E is definitely done at the ground level, trying to get as much information and make sure that we're not adversely impacting areas or disproportionately so.
And then she had a follow-up question on how long preliminary planning, community outreach will be. I mean, the community planning, we don't do this and we don't come and talk to you once and then say, okay, here's a plan, we're done. Well, this is a long process, at least a year for the community plan update. You'll be probably sick of Jay and I by the time we're done with this. Did that answer your question, Kathy?
And again, these are our first sets of meetings that we're having with the community. So you're in on the ground floor, as it were.
And then Tina had two questions. Based on the traffic flow and intersection traffic being identified as some of the highest and most congested in the country, not the county, how far out would construction completion be? Highway 19 in Pinellas was transformational for them. A similar model would be amazing for us as well.
Well, we're just starting the PD&E. The PD&E can go anywhere from 3 to 4 years for this type of level of project. At that point, we're still looking at whether or not the project is a build or a no build. And then there's also then the financing piece. So we do not have answers like that at this particular time. as we move through the study and we move through things and determine the viability of a roadway. And at that point, then, things will be looking at least 3.5 to 4 years from now before we even determine how something like that would happen.
And then she had another question on construction happening. What construction is going to be happening on the S curves on Riverview Drive? I'm not aware of anything going on Riverview Drive at this time.
Yeah, I believe for anything like that about construction that is ongoing in the community, it would be best if they reached out to Public Works.
Yes, and we'll put that information in the chat.
So Keith is asking about having conversations along the corridor. So yeah, definitely Riverview Chamber of Commerce or HOAs that have access to the corridor, or just businesses themselves. Our information is available on the website. It's in this presentation. We'll also be having office hours, which is more of a drop-in one-on-one kind of thing later on this summer. And again, Andrea and I will be doing this project with you guys for well over the next year. So we can have a conversation with you where we go ahead and schedule a time that we can come and speak with your organization on your terms and your community. We just basically have to pick up the phone and talk to one another. So we are at 7 o'clock, and I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. I see that the websites have been put into the chat. Is there anything else? Any other questions, Andrea? Are there any other hands that are raised right now? Of course, yeah, we can speak in the evening to a group.
I don't see anything else. If we missed a question, feel free to go ahead and post it now or reach out to us, and we're happy, as Jay said, to talk with you after this meeting.
So yeah, I see on Gibsonton Drive, across from the Walmart. I don't know anything specific about that. I mean, we don't. It's people always think like, oh, are we in real estate? We're not. We're as planners, we're not in real estate at all. It's more of we're the last people to ever learn about some of this stuff that's happening in your community once they actually come in to rezone, pull permits,
But the zoning department would have that, and we're going to post that in the chat too.
And yes, we definitely can have conversations with the Riverview Chamber or anybody else out there. All right. Well, everybody, thank you very much for attending the meeting. I believe we're going to go ahead and sign off here in a little bit. You've got our contact information. Feel free to reach out to us, and we look forward to working with you and your neighbors in the coming year. All right. Thank you much. You guys have a great evening.
Yep. Thank you.